it up.
Okay.
Okay.
And then so just to also remind me as well, so not everybody, some people will be able to come in at like different times, or?
Yes, I think so. I think coming in at different times. I hope that my air conditioning is not distracting. Sorry if it is.
No, it's fine. It's very minimal. I can't even hear it.
Perfect. All right, so these are the first bylaws that we're going to review. These are the team bylaws for the final vote. We unanimously saw that it was voted on that everybody felt, everyone out of the 17 that responded felt served by these bylaws. There were no recommendations for improving the bylaws, and we unanimously will adopt them. Most of the people who did see it saw it through the email mailing list. So what I did this past time was I scheduled some emails to send out to remind people. And I think that really worked and got people to actually like follow through with the voting. So I think we'll keep doing that in the future whenever possible. So that will be pretty much all we'll announce is like unanimously of the 17 responses we gathered. Everybody wanted to adopt the bylaws. Is there anything else we want to say about this before we move on?
Just to clarify, which these are the member or teams bylaws? Okay.
The teams, yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
And then the member bylaws, this is a draft. We only got 13 responses from this draft. It's not just the member, it's also the name and purpose section, which are pretty much something we've already really done. It's got a lot to do with our mission statement. But all 13 unanimously said they felt adequately served. All 13 said they felt comfortable with the responsibilities of membership. All 13 said that they were comfortable with the rules that govern the members as laid out in this draft. There were no suggestions for improvement. Of the people that did speak a second language, well, I don't want to say second language, a different language, 25% said yes, it would translate. Everyone else did not speak a separate language. And then again, no suggestion for changes. And again, the majority of people were seeing this through the mailing list. So that's really good to know. Are there any questions about this? Anything we should review? Okay, perfect. So we'll go ahead and publish this as well and make it clear that there were 13 people only who responded to this one, while there were more people that responded to the final vote. I think because of this, we aren't going to need to really revise the member bylaws at all, so we can go ahead and make this into a new vote, which let me write that down. I have 25 pens, but for some reason my brain froze up just then. So we will make a final vote. Form. The cool thing is we don't have to do any revisions because of this. So I think I'm going to stop sharing and we can move on to the next item on the agenda, which is, I should have written it down when we were talking about it, Ruben, I'm sorry. I guess we can go into drafting the miscellaneous section, which should include our code of conduct. And also, since everybody here was already part of the previous discussion about fundraising ideas, we will probably return to that if anyone else joins the meeting at a later time. So, all right, I guess let's go for it then. Let me open up what I need to for us to start writing those. I need to open the example document. And does anybody remember if this section can be modeled off of any of the previous sections we wrote? we kind of did that for like the board, the teams, etc. But I feel like this one might have to be drafted kind of independently.
I think so. I think that was kind of where we were at with that.
Okay. So,
Because this one was so customized and it was a little more linked to the very first meeting, the very first interest meeting a year ago.
right. This one's going to be a big one then.
Yeah.
All right. Let's do it in a Google Doc. And then everybody should have access to this. Edie, if you haven't accessed it before, it's in the Google Drive in the Incorporation folder. And I'm going to title it.
Looking around in there right now.
And code of conduct. Okay. Cool. So it should exist. It's saving.
There it is.
Okay. This looks like poop, and I don't know why that happened this time.
Did you copy it from a PDF?
Yeah, that's probably what it is.
Yeah.
I usually do, but I usually actually open the PDF. And this time I just was looking at it on Google Drive. So let's go ahead.
Go through. I was gonna say, if you want to get started, I'll follow behind you and I'll just fix them all real quick.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. That way you can focus on it.
So the first thing is indemnification, which is essentially just saying, you know, don't implicate yourself in any kind of conflict of interest, et cetera, et cetera. But also, if somebody wants to sue the organization, I believe indemnification also is talking about like you can't sue them. Let me share my screen, actually. That might make this a little bit easier for everybody. Here we go. Okay. So it says every person who is, so again, this is copy pasted from the example bylaws that the 501c3 organization, the nonprofit of nonprofits in North Carolina, uses as an example. So it says every person who is or shall have been in the past a director or officer of the organization and his or her personal representatives shall be indemnified by the organization against all costs and expenses reasonably incurred by or imposed upon him or her in connection with or resulting from any action, legal action, suit, or proceeding to which he or she may be made a party by reason of his or her having been a director or officer of the organization, except in relation to such matters as to which he or she shall finally be adjudicated in such action, suit, or proceeding to have acted in bad faith and to have been liable by any reason of willful misconduct in the performance of his or her duty as such director or officer. That very long legal sentence just says, essentially, they are protected unless they were proven to have acted in bad faith in any legal environment. So again, if they sue us, you know, they will have had to violate what we've put down as their laws and whatever the state and federal laws are for a nonprofit organization and be proven to have violated that. So that's not letting somebody know that you're meeting, that's misusing funds or misappropriating funds or investing in like self-trading or something like that for a board member. All of that would be basically making them personally liable and proven to have acted in bad faith. The only thing I think we're going to need to do here is, yep, exactly, change the gender terms and then change director, officer, and organization. So the director should stay the same. I think we have to legally call them directors, but we could call officers zone representatives. And then we're not an organization, we're a guild. I was gonna suggest we all do this, like pick a word and do it all at one time, but then I realized that would be like absolute chaos.
Wait, if we need to, I was gonna say, if we need, can we just do like Control F, replace all?
Yeah, if I don't know how to do that, go for it. Follow your heart, Ruben.
I don't think it would work for the pronouns because you have to use different pronouns in different situations, like they, them, there, but it would for organization.
Okay.
Yeah, so organization needs to be, you said that one needs to be replaced with guild.
Or not. Yeah.
Okay. Replace all. And then the other one was
Officer.
officer.
Replaced with zone representative.
Okay. There was only 3 of those, so
Perfect. Okay.
cool. That should take care of that.
Yep. The next statement, I think we should keep that. I mean, that's a good way to cover everybody's butt, especially if we're going to have a code of conduct. So costs and expenses shall include, but without limiting the generality thereof, attorneys' fees, damages, and reasonable amounts paid in settlement. So again, this is saying we will cover those costs and expenses for whoever it is that's being basically taken to court, and they will be essentially a representative of the guild. And again, it's reasonably incurred by or imposed upon them. So if there's any kind of fine or ticket, you know, we will pay that. I really hope that that doesn't happen, but again, I'd rather that be paid through the guild's funds than out of pocket, unless somebody is proven to have done it in bad faith, you know. Is everybody kind of chill with the way that this one is written?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So the fiscal year, we need to decide when we'd like the fiscal year to be. The standard fiscal year is July to June. That's also the academic fiscal year, so that might be easier for everybody. But then on the other side, because we have a lot of educators in our midst, but on the other side of that, it also might be a more busy and hectic time for educators. So we might want to do like a June to, a January to February fiscal year or whatever it's going to be. I guess it would be January to December. So I don't know what y'all's thoughts on that are.
I don't have enough experience with what would need to happen in June. Means.
So essentially it would be at the end of the fiscal year is when we would have to turn in all of our paperwork. So anything for the IRS, anything for the NC Finance Bureau or whatever the heck they're called, I can't remember right now. But basically all of our tax forms, all of our reporting of income, all of that would need to happen in June. Or within, I think, 90 days is the general limit. It might be 60, but I think it's 90. So that would be something to think about.
I don't have any problem with it being in June. I can't really envision an issue with it being in June. February would be kind of weird because that would be right in the middle of the spring academic semester for a lot of people, for whose classes like start in January. So that could just be like kind of tricky. So I imagine if we're already in the mindset of ending things, like as an educator, like if I'm in the mindset of ending things in June, wrapping things up there, like I'll just be able to like kind of transition a little bit more easily versus like being in like the full swing of a semester and then having to stop, or like having to like, oh, I need to like do some wrap up stuff. I don't know, just to me it makes a lot of to me, it makes a lot of sense, but I'm open to hearing other.
I was thinking the same thing because, I mean, at least if we're still talking about like academics, the break is longer in summer than it is in winter. So the only caveat to that is there's more traveling too. So this would mostly be like, okay, people on the board, you need to understand you can't be traveling in this time frame, you know, unless you have all your ducks in a row and like your forms are filed previously, you know.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's also going to have to be, there's a certain amount of that's personal responsibility for them to understand, you know.
I think with it being the end of June, like I don't get out at the end of May, but most people are done by the end of May. So then that gives the whole month of June to figure it out. I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay. The next thing is the corporate seal. So we can have an official seal that would be inscribed. Listen, I'm excited as a printmaker. I'm like, let's
Right.
that shall have inscribed therein the name of the guild. This seal shall also contain such other words or figures as the board of directors may determine. So this is basically describing our logo more than it is just our seal. I would like to redesign our seal, our logo, or whatever we want to call it, but that's neither here nor there for right now. The seal shall be used by placing, by any process whatsoever, an impression, facsimile, or other reproduction of said official seal. So again, any of our legal documents, we might need to have like an actual stamp of the seal, which would be relatively easy to make. And then on any of our like posters and stuff, we might need to start putting the seal on that as well. That's a fairly common thing to have to do with North Carolina agencies anyway. Is there anything we'd like to change there? Perfect. Next is amendments. So we've talked a little bit about this previously. The bylaws may be altered, amended, or repealed, and new bylaws adopted upon the vote of 2/3 of the members of the board of directors present and voting at a duly constituted meeting, provided that notice of such proposed action, including the content thereof, be included in the call for the meeting. So again, we would have to say clearly and publicly and preferably in writing, we will be voting on the bylaws at this. We have talked about specifically reviewing the bylaws every single time a new board comes in. So I think we'll need to reword this so that it's clear that that has to happen at that time. And then, you know, if we want to, we could also write it so that it could come up more often, you know, like as needed as well. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on that, you two?
I think it makes sense that when a new board comes in to kind of deep dive into it, because if they aren't aware of the bylaws, then they can get really intimate knowledge of it through the process of potentially amending something or having the opportunity to amend things.
I agree.
Perfect. So how should we phrase this? The bylaws, I guess we take out may and we say must. Oh, not that angrily. Must be altered, amended, or repealed. When should we choose to do this? At the end of the fiscal year, or we could also say within 60 days of the end of the fiscal year, which allows them to do it early or late or within 30 days, you know?
I like that. It's kind of flexible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should I say 30 or 60?
I think 60. That gives a lot of time to plan.
Okay. Bylaws must be altered, amended, or repealed within 60 days of the end of the fiscal year, and board of directors are voted in every 2 years. So I would say within a year that there's a better word for this. There's a better way to say this that's more legally sound, but I don't remember if we could just get away with saying within a year that an inaugural board of directors takes hold. I don't know.
Within an election year?
That might be a way to say it.
Yeah.
Well, but so zone representatives are elected as well. And I think are they every 2 years as well?
Let me go back. Hang on.
Okay.
I think so. Because I think we were doing everybody.
Mhm.
Um,
And the other thing is that 60-day thing means that they will
Yeah.
have the assistance of the old board of directors still, because the old board will hang around for, I think, like a month or two.
mhm. Yeah. So with zone reps, that was every 2 years.
Every 2 years? Okay. So we can probably
Mhm.
get away with saying the end of the fiscal year within an election year. Should we say as needed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or as, yeah.
I think we should say as requested by the majority.
Of membership.
Yeah.
Okay. Does membership need to be kept? Yeah.
Plurality. Well, no, that's a majority because it's a yes or no. Should we or shouldn't we?
Yeah.
Uh, So what do we require for new bylaws to be adopted? Should it be a plurality, or I guess a majority of all members, including board, officer, etc.?
Can you remind me the difference
What do you mean?
between plurality and majority?
Yes, a plurality is when you have like 3 different options. So
Uh-huh.
like our election is actually a plurality because we usually have more than 2 options for president. And then a majority is just the majority of us picked one over the other. So that's how I kind of understand that. New bylaws will be adopted upon the, and do we want to give it a 2/3 or should it just be a plurality instead? You know, because 2/3 is a higher threshold.
Yeah, I'm fine with it being plurality. I think that's what we've done elsewhere as well.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's what's in the board of directors. So it's like we'd at least have that consistency across bylaws.
Yes. And I'm going to say members, board, I'm going to say directors. Present and voting at a duly constituted meeting. I think that's fine, provided that notice of such proposed action, including the content thereof, be included in the call for the meeting. So again, we have to notify people, like that's what we're doing at this meeting. I also would like to put a stipulation that they do not have to be revised if there's not a desire to do so. Or amended. I don't know how to phrase this. Are not required.
Amendments
Yeah,
shall not be required. Well, is that getting kind of redundant? Because that is kind of what the very first sentence is saying, like when we say as requested.
yeah, I think what we should say Yeah, I think that might actually cover it entirely. It's just saying as
Yeah.
requested.
Yeah. Because while it does read like at first, like, oh, they have to be altered, there has to be an amendment, it's just saying, it's actually just saying that there has to be one within 60 days if it has been requested.
Yeah. So I think new bylaws will be, yeah.
I mean, also, I think this is me just being a little grammatical about this, but I kind of feel like moving as requested by the majority to be at the beginning of the sentence. Just so that like establishes membership requests as like the main subject of the sentence. Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying, but I do think at its current location, it's working double. So it's basically saying as they request it, so we can review it outside of those 60 days, but we can also review, we need their request in order to review it at all. So I don't know, it's kind of a matter of like, how, we can move it if there's a better way to add the first part as well, that, we need to have, the bylaws can be revised outside of that 60-day window. Really, it's technically on a 120-day window, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think that'll be okay.
Okay. Okay. Do you think that's enough information about amendments? Okay, cool. So section 5 is the activities of the guild. No substantial part of the activities of the guild shall be the carrying on of propaganda or otherwise attempting to influence legislation. And the guild shall not participate in or intervene in, including the publishing or distribution of statements, any political campaign on behalf of any candidate for public office. So the place I could see us running into difficulty is with Instagram here. So this is going to have to be very clear to anybody who's operating the Instagram. We are not advocating for any specific thing. We can tell people to vote, but we can't tell them what or who to vote for. That's basically what this is saying. Okay. I think that should stay. I don't. It gets into a gray area when it's things like us posting about Palestine or action items specifically relating to, that's Palestine is just an example that's in my head. Because we have posted several action items for that and like contact your legislator, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. And this might be something we need to ask a lawyer because I do not want to erase that from our participation in our printmaking community. So I don't know. What do y'all think about that?
Just reading it like thoroughly again. The phrase carrying on of propaganda, I feel like the definition of propaganda can be fluid depending on who you're talking to. But the influence of legislation is super specific. I mean, it's not saying that our members can't voice those opinions. It's just saying that the guild, so anybody that's running the Instagram, could repost something from someone else saying it, right, in these terms, but they can't distinctly say.
Yes.
Right. And if our membership, and if someone in our membership is like doing a project that is propagandistic,
yeah,
we can like support our member.
For instance, going back to the specific like Palestinian thing, like if Zainab takes over and wants to talk about that, That's Zainab talking about that. That's not, so. Cool,
Okay.
cool. I hope she does. I think she is taking over sometime soon and I'm excited for it. Irrelevant.
Zena uses they them now.
Oh, I'm so sorry. They them. But I'm excited for them to take over.
When's
Thank you.
When's that happening? I didn't see it.
It might be next month,
Okay.
maybe. Or they
We-
might be like
They
significant.
live here. We text all the time, so I'm gonna bug them about that.
But yeah, irrelevant. But
Yeah.
so that statement, we're, I think, maybe going to leave it as it stands because I think there's a little bit of gray area, but I did write down that we should talk to a lawyer about that and how it would function with our Instagram, just to make sure we've got our bases covered. Notwithstanding any other provision of these articles, the guild shall not carry any other activities not permitted to be carried on. So we're not going to do anything we're not allowed to do by as like a corporation exempt from federal income tax. So we'll follow those rules as amended. And there's no way we can write that out. Like we have to follow those rules in order to be tax exempt. Or by a corporation contribution to which are deductible under section 170 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1954 as amended. Oh, the Internal Revenue Law. Okay. So basically, we're going to follow the rules. Yeah. We'll play nice. That I don't think it can not be here. Like it just has to. And we're just going to have to become really familiar with what that actually means. But I have looked at this section and it's so big. It's so much information. I need a lawyer to sit down with me and read it because I don't completely comprehend it. So moving on to section 6, if that's okay with everyone. With the dissolution and distribution of assets. So if we were to dissolve as as an incorporation, no part of the guild's net earnings shall inure to the benefit of or be distributable to its members, trustees, zone representatives, or other private persons, except that the guild shall be authorized and empowered to pay reasonable compensation for services rendered to the center. That's not where they would be rendering them, to the guild, because we are virtual, and to make payments and distributions that further the purposes set forth herein. So again, if we have any outstanding payments when we dissolve, we can still pay those people. If we dissolve, we can still pay those people, but the rest of the money can't go to any individual member or anything. And that's mostly set up so that people can't be like, yeah, let's just quit and I'll take the money and run, you know? I think that language is comprehensible and should probably stay, but that's my personal opinion. Okay, cool. The guild, let me make sure that's where we stopped. Yes, the guild may be dissolved and its assets and liabilities liquidated in such manner as the board of directors shall resolve, provided that upon dissolution after payments of all debts, no part of the remaining assets may be distributed to any guild trustee. We don't have trustees. Any guild member or zone representative, but shall be distributed as the articles of incorporation direct in accordance with such laws and regulations that apply. So essentially, it's up to the board of directors how those funds get kind of dissolved into the world, as long as we've paid our debts and no part of what we have left should be distributed to guild members or zone representatives. And again, the articles of incorporation have directions, essentially, that describe what the laws and regulations would be applicable to. The distribution must be to another guild. So I would actually change this back to organization. Exempt under section 501c3 as amended, or to the United States state or local governments for a public purpose. So basically those funds would have to go to another organization like us, or we could give it to the government, or or donate it to some kind of public purpose. So yeah, so if we have to, we can send it to MAPC, or let's say like what is it, the Seattle Print Center or something. I can't remember what they're called.
Yeah.
Some other organization that we have confirmation it's 501c3. So this is written in such a way that the board of directors can't just be like, I'll just put it in my pocket.
Mhm,
You know,
mhm.
they have to say like, okay, we get to decide who we donate these monies to. So these assets as well. So
Yeah.
that's, good.
No problem with that.
Okay, perfect. I think this is also pretty comprehensive. Like, I don't think there's anything we need to add to this section either. Okay. And then it just says these bylaws were approved at a meeting of the board of directors of ABC Guild on blankety blank, and they were most recently revised on blankety blank. So this is where we would need to add a stipulation about the code of conduct. And I've been thinking about this, and I think the main thing we should do, and I don't know how like logical this is or how much like a lawyer would agree with me, but my thought is we should add just like a little section that says all members, board of directors, and zone representatives and volunteers are expected to, and we can also actually encompass anybody that works with us is expected to follow the code of conduct. And then essentially lay the code of conduct out in a separate document. And basically,
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be the best way to go about doing it.
Yeah.
But that's just my little foundling brain telling me what to do. So I don't
Well, and
know.
I think that's what we've done on the other sections too. Like that's what we did on when I'm looking at the board of directors one, and I think we did the exact same thing on zone representatives, which
Mhm.
sorry, I just changed the name because it was previously officers. I just changed it to be zone reps because it was always tripping me up. But yeah, that's kind of what we did. Like we said the same things, like you'd be bound by that. And then, yeah.
All members, directors, volunteers. How should I phrase that then? And should I say contract workers?
Yes.
Contractors?
Any individual contracted.
That's a good way to put it.
I know that's like longer, but I don't know. Contractors just feels hyper specific.
Yeah, I like that. And I also want to make it very clear, like they must be contracted by us, the guild, not our individual member, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or like an individual director or whatever.
Yeah.
Are expected to adhere to the code of conduct, which is
What are you thinking with that?
as laid out. Actually, I guess we should say as created, amended, and kept. Maybe it's just created and amended. Should we say that this is by the membership?
That one's hard.
Yeah.
because it's just not the reality of it right now. Like we are kind of setting it.
That's true. And I mean,
But we have room in the amendments that like the membership can have that voice on that. And maybe like our code of conduct has a section of like 4 amendments as well.
so what if I add the code of conduct here in section 4? The bylaws and code of conduct must be altered, amended, or repealed within 60 days of the end of the fiscal year. Because then it is clear, like all of this is relevant. The members have to be the ones that vote.
Yeah.
There has to be a plurality, etc.
Mhm.
Yeah. That makes complete sense.
Perfect. Then I think it's sufficient for us to say that all members, directors, volunteer team members, zone representatives, and any individual contracted by the guild are expected to adhere to the code of conduct. I don't think we need to talk about its creation or its amendment because we've already talked about that.
Yeah.
I feel like my brain wants to just be like, see attached.
Yeah, that's kind of.
What's an official way to say that, you know?
Well, I think in these documents, it being capitalized is its own way of being like it's inferred,
That it's a
but it's not explicit. Yeah, like it's referring to that section.
So I think we also should talk about how people are consenting to the code of conduct. And we've talked before about it being something they sign when they join. And I think it should also be something they sign each time they renew. I don't know a good way to phrase that at each joining. No. At the inception and renewal of each individual membership.
Mm-hmm.
Be, I guess, retained by the board. I think that's probably the most logical person to have retain that since it's more central than the zone representative.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Is there anything else we should add here?
I'm just thinking, hang on, let me go back to our membership document. Did we say anything about that? Because that should probably be in the membership articles.
I think we've mentioned the code of conduct there. I know we've brought it up a couple of times, but I don't know if it's specifically in membership. It should be, I would think.
It's brought up that they have to hold themselves to it. But there's not any language that says they have to sign it.
Okay.
Yeah, it just says, yeah, members are responsible for upholding code of conduct and payment of annual dues. Initiate investigative action related to the code of conduct. And qualifications for membership individuals must also hold themselves to the code of conduct. Oh, wait. You did say this, signed at the payment of their dues.
Ah, got it.
Great, so we're covered then. I just wanted to make sure that was.
That's good.
That was covered.
I'm glad because redundancy is our friend.
Yes, consistency, woohoo.
Yes. So I think, we've talked about how the code of conduct can be revised. We've talked about who is responsible for upholding it. Any individual contracted by the guild is expected to adhere. I don't know what the legal conjugation of that verb will be. Expected to adhere to the code of conduct, which must be signed At the inception and renewal of each individual membership, these signed codes of conduct must be retained by the board of directors. For how long? Infinitely, or for a minimum of 5 years?
Like 5 years from when their membership is terminated, or why would we need to hold on to that?
So if we were to do any kind of like expulsion from the guild for continual violations of the code of conduct, and that person decided to get litigious, we would have to like have the document to be like, no, but you signed this code of conduct, you know?
Yeah, okay.
If anybody is asked to be excused or expelled, that's the word, from the guild, then I think that their most recent signed code of conduct just stays infinitely, because you never know what could happen.
That's true.
Yeah,
And
it
it could
seems like we
also
should.
be allegations that come up significantly later, which has happened before. So how do we navigate those? Like, did they violate the code of conduct 3 years ago? Is that, we're gonna have to think about that when we write the code of conduct as well. Unfortunately, you know. And then of course, that's what a lawyer is gonna have to tell us is like, can we really accept complaints that are 5 years older and investigate those within our, you know, means, or is it better for us to stay within the past, you know, year of their signed code of conduct?
Yeah, like what's the statute of limitations on that kind of issue?
Exactly. So I'm just going to say retained by the board of directors and leave it open. Does that sound good? That way, whoever is reviewing this can be like, you got to be specific, or they can say, yeah, no, it's fine to leave that open-ended so that you have that loophole to be like, well, we actually do have code of conduct from 7 years ago when, hopefully this never happens, but when you assaulted somebody at one of our conventions or whatever, you know, and they didn't come forward about it because they were afraid to, which is normal. That happens frequently, unfortunately. Man, I don't know. Does that sound good? Okay. Were there any additional miscellaneous provisions that we needed to create? I feel like there were.
Is there anything with social media?
We did have like a social media policy, but I think that's going to be separate.
We just want to keep that as like the guidelines.
Because it becomes so, it would be a huge mess if we like put this into the bylaw. I think this is what I'm trying to remember the conversation we had was like, it would be a very big mess if we had written out all of these like specific terms about like us using an Instagram, et cetera, and then we no longer use Instagram and we've suddenly like swapped to it. We'd have to like fully revise our bylaws each time. Whereas if it's just social media guidelines, it's less difficult. We could also add something about social media guideline, but I think maybe this is the place to add it, but you know what? It might have been better to add it to the zone representatives. Did we put that in there?
Hang on, I'm looking back at Teams right now, which by the way, there is something. Oh wait, no, that was membership articles. Yeah, I mean, like we've got, like it's part of the responsibilities within the teams. And then let me look at zone reps. We don't really have anything, we don't use the specific language social media. But I think maybe we were saying, no, we didn't even say public. I think we just said promoting guild activities and membership benefits.
Because we could add a really similar section like this one that just says social media and then literally just says who would be adhering to the social media guidelines.
Well, and we can expand it to be beyond social media too. Like I'm thinking like something using the word public instead, in case like the landscape changes, and we've already got that language sort of written in. Hang on, I'm just looking through all the old bylaws. Look at, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's a code of conduct thing in general. Like maybe we just throw that in the code of conduct and then,
That's a very good point, because it's pretty much just a line item at that point too.
yeah, because we're all bound by that.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Okay. Perfect. Cool. So how do we all feel about this? Yeah. Okay. We've already talked, I'm just going back over things in my head. We've already talked about how our money is going to be managed and spent, etc. We've talked about the representative strategies that we'll have. We've talked about the way that volunteers will be treated and what kinds of compensation that everybody will get. We have talked about the way that individual members need to behave, which we need to talk a little bit more about. I don't think there's anything we need to add, but I do think, you know, it'll go up to a draft. So if somebody thinks of something, go up to a vote for a draft is what I should say, to be more clear. So if somebody thinks we should add something, they will let us know. I'm going to just double check my notes too to see if there's anything else. I don't know if we need to put anything here about like, you know what? Maybe it's better if we just look at other organizations in our field. So bylaws for MAPC, which they recently revised.
Mhm.
Let's look what, that's not it, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. There we go. Right, it's called a constitution for them. So let's see what their miscellaneous provisions include. Blah, blah. Boop, boop. Brought it up.
I was noticing when I was looking at theirs the first time how simple theirs is.
Yes, I do like how simple theirs is. I think it's streamlined a lot, and I'm hoping that whoever our legal advisor is lets us do that. And it's like, oh, you don't need all this. That would be wonderful.
Great.
Thank you. Let's throw it in the trash. So again, they returned to a bunch of So they have their articles and then they go into more depth.
Mhm.
Okay. Duties, executive board, meetings, conferences. We're not at this point, but maybe one day we will be, and we'll have to revise. Publications as well,
Mhm.
not so much. Operating fund, we talked sort of about, we talked around it. This also might be because of the state they're incorporated in, though.
Right. That's what I was thinking too.
Because they have to like write out their budget, whereas we just had to put in a fiscal year. We've already discussed the removal of people, right? In each section, I think we discussed their removal.
Mhm.
And it's mostly just for violating the code of conduct or breaking the law.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so yeah, they don't have any miscellaneous provisions. They have things kind of woven within that sort of fit the bill, but let's
Right.
see. Oh, I can't remember the name of them. I'm just gonna look up NC Art Organization. There it is, NC Arts Council. That's what I was looking for. I'm not going to look through their whole website. That's too much. Oh, okay, well, there's the Raleigh Arts Commission. The Museum Council. Theirs is going to be written slightly different, though.
Wait, is that it? Right? Oh wait, no.
Oh, sorry, I just,
No, that wasn't it. It didn't include bylaws.
okay. I just rocketed away. I was like, bye. I believe this is one as well. Okay, let's see what happens.
Weird.
Okay, yeah, so theirs are laid out like ours pretty much.
Okay.
Meetings, miscellaneous, conflict of laws. Okay, yeah, we pretty much already said that about not only state, but also federal law and how to amend. Ooh. Human Trafficking Commission, what?
Huh? What?
They were adopted at the Human Trafficking Commission. Strange, but all right.
Cool.
Very weird.
Yes.
Yeah, I have a lot of feelings about that.
Mhm.
Duties, blah, blah, blah. Board of directors, beep, beep. Finances, amendments. Yeah, it just mostly seems like people put in amendments and how they happen. I will say this group, like they have a separate thing entirely for their finances. We did, oh, you know what it is? Election committees. We need to talk about how election committees are going to operate. Because we need somebody to put out the vote and tally the vote. And I think we said that they cannot be going up for whatever position. I don't know if we talked about whether or not they can be essentially leaving a position. So like a board member who's like, bye, can they be on the election committee?
They should not.
Yeah. Okay. And then like, how do we get these people? Are they volunteers? Are they zone representatives? Like, how do we,
So MAPC had like a chair of somebody who had done that, who had experience, and then they picked people who were not experienced. And so that was like Stephanie and I. We did the last one actually. And yeah, I think we were just reached out to by like the president, Susanna Crum reached out to us. And I think we were like, not, our names were given by like the officers, if I'm not mistaken.
Were you members?
Yes.
Okay, that's
Well, I know I was a member. Hang on. Let me go back and find my email that dealt with that, if I still have it. I hope I do. Edie, have you ever done that?
Mm-mm.
Okay. I don't know if maybe you had done that before.
No, I've been on the board of MAPC, but I haven't done the elections.
Maybe I archived it. Maybe I don't have it anymore. Yeah, I think I archived it and it's gone now. Shoot.
They call it a nominating committee. We don't do.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was, I remember being very frustrated by the process and very confused because we provided a slate of candidates that was nominated. And then the vote was given to, like, we provided then the people that would be voted upon, basically. But it was, God, it was so weird. It was like, I'm trying to remember the specific thing that was just so, I don't know. I kept getting tripped up about it. And I think, like, so the chair of that committee was, I think maybe a former board. Was Edie, do you remember if Travis Jensen was on the board at one point?
That sounds right.
So I think, like, because he had served, I think he had served on the board, and so he was the chair of that committee. So he could kind of direct us. And I think like that, like I had so many, I didn't really know what I was doing. And so like I kept like saying one thing, he would like correct me on that. And so I was like, oh, okay, it's just something I don't really know, but it was at least helpful to have that experience.
Is there any other organization that's not SGCI or MAPC that I'm not thinking of? That is a 501c3. Is Penland a 501c3? They're doing something qualitatively different, but they might have something. They have a board of trustees. Never mind. They're a
I was
whole
just going to look up the
situation.
Lawrence Arts Center.
Okay, go for it. There's no need for both of us to be doing that. I'm trying to think. Sertoma Art Center. Where are their bylaws? It's a secret.
I'm trying to look for this Seattle Print Arts. Is that what you were just doing?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I can't find their bylaws.
Yeah, I can't find Lawrence Arts Center's bylaws.
What is it called? The EAA. Oh, wow. What? A typo. Wait, no. Okay. This is an alumni association. It's not what I'm looking for, but that's okay. Yes. Sure. Okay, so they just have, the College Arts Association just has a bunch of separate articles for these things. We could have something that's about the formation of committees as well. And then they have a bunch of information about the nominating committee. We don't have a finance and budget committee. That's the board. We don't have an audit committee. That's the board. This would be the election committee. This is again the zone of representatives, so why would we have it? Movement. Hmm. Okay. Oh, this is some other random thing. So looking at the College Arts Association, they have a whole article dedicated to elections and nominations and appointments, which I think makes sense because I don't think they have. So they have officers and a board of directors, but they're like very big. So they have a bunch of committees as well.
Mhm.
But they talk about elections and appointments, the nomination of candidates, which we're not doing. But we might need to write out that nomination is it's like self-nomination. We don't need other people to validate you. Like you can just do it. So I'm gonna put that there. I'm putting down a collection of thoughts about this. Sorry. It's probably boring to watch. The nominating board, nominate at least 6, blah, blah, blah. Not doing that. Not doing that. Yeah, so that's what it is they have so many different sections of people who are elected or nominated. But they do talk about how that happens. So I don't think we should say how.
We did in one article.
Okay.
I think it may have been the board. We did say specifically Google Forms.
Okay, so maybe that's something.
Directors shall be elected through Google Forms.
Okay. We might have to revise that.
Just to be more ambiguous.
Because we could eventually have it set up on our website where we just are picking up that information.
Yeah. I think that's what MAPC did. They had a web developer come in and create a voting site.
Yeah. All ballots must have been voted and received. I'm going to copy paste all of this. Cool. So I think this one covers pretty much everything we're going to have to say. So they discuss when the votes need to be received, They also discussed how the votes needed to be received in order to be valid. And I do think it's a good idea to have like that written out in our bylaws, like it's from here to here, you have to vote in that given time. They shall be counted and checked at some meeting. So maybe we have an annual meeting. It would be biannual, but still in such a manner as prescribed by the council and the executive director, and the results shall be preserved at the headquarters of the association for a period of at least 1 year. So how long do we keep those results, et cetera, in case somebody wants to dispute them? The candidates for the positions of elective, it doesn't matter what the positions are, shall be ranked in order of number of votes received. The highest ranking candidates equal in number to the positions to be filled, blah, blah, blah. That's about the board, it's whatever. The results of the election shall be announced at the annual meeting in the newsletter of the association or as the board may otherwise determine. So it needs to be announced, and we need to talk about how we're doing it. Elected directors and emerging professional directors, so whoever it is that we're electing, shall hold office for the term to which they have been elected or until their successors are elected and qualified. We don't need that part. I think we've already discussed that in each position. Well, we could say something to the effect of any elected official will be, will serve out their term as laid out in the bylaws,
Mhm.
Cool. All of a sudden, I'm very tired. I'm sorry. Let's see.
It's that time of the day.
So I guess where should we start? We've got election committees. How do we form them? I wrote down their members who are not running for any office or to be a director. So maybe we start there. Or occupying any office. Period, I think is fine, because I think director is also an office.
Yeah.
So I guess we could say they would be selected by the previous board. That feels kind of icky though.
Yeah.
At random, I like, but then also how do you make sure that they participate?
Yeah. I mean, it was like an email from Susanna that was like, are you interested in doing this?
Mhm. So how should we phrase that to minimize the manipulation of results? They could be selected by any board member who is not running for another term. There's a better way to say this, but if they're not running again, I feel like it's okay if they pick people, So if it's like me and I've been a board member for 2 years and I'm totally done with it for whatever reason, I think it would make sense for me to be able to say like, okay, ask these 5 members, I also think we should say at random still.
How do we generate that?
I think what we do is kind of what we've done for a while, where we just kind of contact people until we have the right number, So we contact until we have, say, 5 people, because I feel like we're not going to need more than 5 people to tally these results and like make sure it's fair.
Yeah. I think the MAPC one was 3.
We might be able to get away with that because we just need to make sure it's an odd number of people voting so that at least 2 people are a majority, of 3 members.
Right? Was it 3? I think it was. It was me, Stephanie, and Travis, I think.
I think maybe we say instead of selected, this would be the place to use the word nominated.
Because they have to agree to the nomination. Yeah.
Exactly. So nominated at random by any board member who is not running for another term. And then if everybody's running for another term, we would say actually, let's just say it right here. Any board, let's just say any director or zone representative who is not running for another term and will consist of 3 volunteer members. So we've got the randomness from membership list.
How do we provide like leadership within this committee? Because I like, I would like, it was hard because I had like my own idea of it and I had to be kind of like reeled in a little bit. And it was helpful because I wasn't thinking about, there were certain things I wasn't thinking about, like regarding leadership, you know, of MAPC when I was there. And so it was helpful to have that kind of voice guiding
Where did
us.
it come from for you? Was it Susanna still?
No, this was Travis. Although Travis would also reach out to Susanna if we raised a question about something, we were like, what does this mean? Or what does this term kind of mean? Like there were guidelines provided to us. There was like a page long.
Yeah.
But there were some things that seemed like we didn't know quite how to interpret them. But Travis, like through his experience, was able to be like, this is what we need to think about. We need to stay on track with this. And yeah, like he kept everything very like structured and organized. And that
So
was helpful.
what was his position? Do you know?
When he, like prior to being the chair of the committee? Let me look. Let me just go look up. I'm sure it's on his website.
Because we could always say this committee will be chaired by, again, it could be a director or a zone representative not running for another term. But I think it should be a different person than who's randomly electing them.
Yeah.
So
He was definitely not like a current person. Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't find out. He disappeared. He seemed to have knowledge of the board
okay.
and like their responsibilities. So like he knew each of the positions and what was required of them. So in a lot of ways, like we didn't have to go through and read the bylaws necessarily to like understand. Like he was kind of a nice like facilitator.
Okay, so I've written some more stuff. So based on what you said, this committee will be chaired by a different director or zone representative than the nominator who is not running for another term. Votes will be collected virtually using a format like Google Forms, just to keep us consistent. And will be collected for a period of, I figure 1 month is good. And I figure May is a good month. Because June's that's cutting it kind of close to the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah.
And then if we're just doing it annually in May, I think people will start to keep up with it and be like, oh, right, we got to do that, you know?
With the election being tallied in May, does that mean the officers start in July? The new one? Okay.
Yeah, or they might even start in June so that they can see what the finances look like. Because I think we wrote in at least the board that there's like a 2-month overlap or a month-long overlap between the old and the new. Maybe that's what we should look at to decide.
6 months.
6 months. Oh, okay, then maybe we.
Director. Yeah, directors would be able to assist incumbent board members for 6 months following the course of their term. Maybe we can just simply say up to 6 months
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
to provide some cushion.
Maybe a good idea if we actually do this during the December break. But I'm not sure. Because we could collect all of this information for a period of 1 month in December. That would give plenty of time for the election committee to compile anything. And then if we do have a tie, we could go into some kind of runoff, which would be good to do. I don't know. What do y'all think about that?
So have the election not correspond with the fiscal year, but prior to the end of the fiscal year. So that way new and old have some time. So wouldn't that throw off the new board from the fiscal year? Or no?
So it would, but I don't think they get their actual full powers until the end of the fiscal year. So basically until that 6 month period is up or whatever time frame. So I honestly think it might be good for them because they'll start to attend meetings, they'll get to ask stuff, and then they'll actually see how the organization is working. And so when we say something like, do you want to revise the bylaws at this bylaw meeting? They can be like, yeah, because this sucked, or no, because this worked really well. You know, they'll actually have informed opinions instead of being like, no. Yeah, I don't know. What do y'all think about that?
I think if I were coming in to a position like that, I'd want that much time probably to feel acclimated.
Okay. Yeah, I would too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so
Okay.
we'll collect it in December. I'm going to say a period of 1 month during December and in the final fiscal year of the previous directors and zone representatives tenure. I think that covers it. Might be written a little bit awkwardly, but I think that makes sense. But it does let us know that we're collecting the votes virtually and within a certain time frame. It tells us 3 members between the election shall propose. We're not doing proposals. In the election, the chair will allow nominations from the floor. That's irrelevant because anybody can run. So we do need to say that. Where is the voting section? Votes will be collected. Okay, I'll put it right here. So here's a complication, another little fold to unfurl. So this makes it sound like the election committee would happen like a little bit before December, whenever it works, which I think is fine. It's better for us to be like, you need to have the voting done in December and they can kind of collect the information. But the big thing is like, how do we know who we're voting for? So do they need to be formed at the basically in like November to collect nominations or self-nominations, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah, so there was like, I think for the last one, it was October. It was announced at the conference. And then I think like September, I think I was asked in August. We looked at it at the like, I think we had like, they had a month to like get stuff. And then we looked at everything on a Google Drive,
Mhm.
and like we had like a week to look at everything, and then we did one meeting where we looked at everything, and then we provided our list of like our top candidate, like our top 2 per position. And then if there were things where we basically just made our case for each position, we actually all ended up being fairly on the same page. There were only like very minor differences, and then we would make our cases, and then we changed our mind, and then we provided, and this was like the thing that had to be made really clear to us, we were only providing the slate of candidates to be voted upon,
Mhm.
not the actual people that we wanted. So it was a way to like remove bias. And then that was announced, and then basically everyone had a week to vote. It was kind of really short.
Yeah, we
Um,
was really crunchy.
yeah, it was like, I was like, oh, this is real fast. And but then it was all announced that, because they wanted it to be announced in October at the virtual symposium conference, which they announced at the membership meeting.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have put in 2 different things that might address what we're talking about. I'm actually going to highlight that in a lighter color. So from what you were saying, essentially you were formed in October, right?
Yeah.
So is that kind of the timeline we would want to stick with, since we have all of December to vote? So it would be like we form the committee in October. The self elections have to be done in November, like the end of November. And then we vote all of December. Does that make sense? So it's like a 3-month period where people actually get to interact. Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's great.
Okay, cool, 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 cool,
I think
cool.
it just gives everyone time.
So let me just read the sentence to make sure it makes sense. Election committees are composed of members who are not running for or occupying any office, formed in October. They are nominated at random from the membership roster by any director or zone representative who is not running for another term, and will consist of 3 volunteer members. This committee will be chaired by a different director or zone representative than the nominator, who is not running for another term. All nominations will be self-nominations. I think I might need to say for any given position, will be self-nominations submitted to the election committee in November. So I will actually say by the end of November. That sound good? And then votes will be collected virtually during a period of 1 month, which is December, in the final fiscal year of the previous directors and zone representatives' tenure. That sounds good to me. Does it sound good to everybody else? Okay. Okay, cool. So again, we've got the numbers. This says odd numbered years. We would be odd numbered years. That might be an easier way for us to list that, but I'm skeptical of it because we're still not incorporated. The nominating committee shall be enjoined. We're not doing that. In an election, again, nominations from the floor. Okay. So we talked about when the ballots must have been received. I don't know if we really need to say this. We've already basically said it. It's just more strongly worded than the way we said it. That basically, if it's a vote after December, we're not counting it. The votes shall be counted and checked at the annual meeting. We already described when that was going to happen. We do need to say that the results shall be preserved. Should we go with the 1 year? I feel like 1 year is fine, but maybe 2 years since that's the whole tenure that they'll have. Let's go with 2. And then the candidates shall be ranked in order. Well, yes. I guess we could say candidates shall be deemed successful through the determination of a plurality. That's basically saying what they're saying. But that way, like if we have only 2 board positions, or I think a minimum of 3 board members is what we have going on, then if we have 5 people applying, it makes it clear that like the people who receive the most votes out of those 5, the 3 people who get the most votes out of those 5 will be nominated. I think that makes sense. I think I'm going to highlight it just in case. The highest ranking candidates equal. That's fine. Will fill the requisite for the open positions. Candidates shall be deemed. Okay. The result of the election shall be announced. Yeah, how should we announce these votes? I think through the newsletter is good. Maybe
It's a website.
Go ahead.
Website. A newsletter would be, I guess website is static, newsletter is something that we could do both.
Would we say, does the website count as social media, or?
That's kind of why I wanted to adopt like a more all-encompassing language, like all public platforms utilized by the guild.
That's good.
Ranging from social media to email to websites. And like if we ever, because are we doing like all member meetings? Like will we be doing that? I can't remember if that's like, we have like an annual one, right?
Yeah, we want to do town halls, but I think we didn't put that out, or maybe we did type out town halls.
I'm looking, hang on, let me look at the membership article or bylaws.
All my thoughts just fell out of my head. What are we doing?
I was looking at the meeting, like how often, if we have like a scheduled like calendar meeting,
Yeah.
like annual or biannual meetings. I don't see it really laid out in the membership. Because all we just said they're allowed to attend any meeting at any level. But I mean, like, because we are also publicly putting out our meetings on,
Yeah,
we're publishing them on YouTube. So it's kind of, that's kind of why, yeah, like any public platform
yeah. I think-
utilized by the guild. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Preserved for a period of, and preserved. And we talked about maybe doing it for 2 years, the full tenure of every position.
Sure. Yeah.
Sounds probably fine. And then the results of a book, beep beep, did that. And then I feel like this is kind of redundant that they would hold office for the term that they're elected in. We've already talked about this in each individual section, so I don't know if we need to say it here. What do you think? Edie's
Sorry,
nodding.
can you repeat that?
Yes, I think. Already talked about basically how they would hold office once they're elected. Like we did that in each individual section. So whenever we talked about like board of directors, we talked about what that meant when they were elected, etc. So I think we don't need to say it again here.
Yeah.
But one thing I did want to check real quick, which is why I came over here, was, oh, please let me remember it. Nomination, vacancies, term of office, 2 years, quorum, meetings, waiver of notice. Committees, that's what I wanted to check. We've already talked about the creation of committees. They are all executive committees that would be created, with the exclusion of the election committee. We made that pretty clear. Again, excluding any independent committees. So maybe we should say just election, because I don't know why else we would have an independent committee.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, like the only committee I could think of is like a review of conduct, or is that managed by the board?
That's true. Let's see. Okay.
Hang on, I'll check membership too, because we may have laid that out in membership.
Yeah, it's not said here. I will also look at zone representatives because they might actually be the people in charge of that. I can't remember. Whichever one. We do need to talk about special elections as well, though. But the election committee. Yeah, so that's it. It's not in there either.
Okay.
But that's good. We don't need to talk about that.
And then just to do a time check, we have about 10 minutes left.
Thank you. Election committee. Okay. I just added a statement saying special elections will be held in a similar fashion and with a similar timeline. I do think that that is sufficient, but I don't know. That might also be me rushing.
We can always revisit it at the next one too.
That's true.
We might be able to have, hopefully Chelsea and Ani would be able to be there, and the
Yeah.
rest of the incorporation team.
So that's something that I'm going to add right here. Code of conduct. Should I add committee here?
You call it a review board
Yeah.
earlier?
Maybe
We,
call it a review board instead.
yeah, like we had called it, like we referred to it, like membership have the power to initiate investigative actions related to code of conduct.
Mhm. Yeah, so they can report basically, but who is collecting those reports? And I think we intended for it to be an independent committee. But now we have to talk about what that means.
Yeah.
Because there could be like it shouldn't be on the board of directors heads, because what if one of the board of directors is up for review?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and it says, we even laid it out in the zone representatives as when they were team leaders, any team leader may be removed at any time with or without cause by majority of the responding membership through direct violation of the code of conduct of the guild.
gotcha. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave this little note here since we're hitting the end. I don't know if I have individually, like as me, the brain power to do this part right now. Me as a person, I'm sure
Yeah.
we as a group could do it, but I personally am like zonked.
Zach tackled a really big document right now.
It is, but we're almost done. Like we are so close to being done. I'm so excited. After this, it's just review. I think we should probably review the social media guidelines just to make sure they make sense and are written generically enough. And then making the code of conduct, and that is it. And then the articles of incorporation, and then we actually incorporate. But like that's based on these, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's exciting. So I'm gonna write this down. We're gonna need to finish miscellaneous provisions, draft the code of conduct, and then the articles of incorporation. And then I think after that, we can do our social media policy. Because I really don't think that the social media policy needs to be preeminent in that way. Where the bylaws, like we just want to have people voting on them the whole way through. So social media is not so much a everybody voting on it type of document, you know, because that's got more to do with the laws that we have to follow and less to do with what our membership wants us to do, you know. So, okay. Cool. Thank you both for being here. I am going to also go ahead and like this is here. Feel free to review it for like language whenever you get the chance. But I'm also going to go ahead and take what we just voted on that was ratified. I'm going to take all of that information and make it like a presentation or not a presentation, a graphic for next Wednesday, I believe is usually when I post those. So people will know about that. And then I will also announce in the newsletter that we have. Is there anything else we drafted today? No, it was the membership draft that everybody was like, yeah, let's go with it. Mm-hmm. So I will go ahead and make that a new vote as well.
Okay. And then do we want to, are we solidifying Thursdays 10 a.m. Central Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Time?
Yes.
As work days, as like just open work days to keep doing incorporation work?
That works for me.
Okay.
I think it's a very helpful thing to have those, at least so far, the one that we've managed to do.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah, I think it's a good idea. I think it'll also like streamline us a little bit because something that happens for me is I'll say like, okay, let's all review this before next meeting. And then I don't have time. You know?
Yeah. Or like a month has passed and we're like, wait, what did we say?
Exactly. Like looking back at the board of directors, which we wrote what, like 5 or 6 months ago. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah,
it was a while ago. So
yeah,
I'm sure whatever legal aid we get, which I really do need to contact those volunteer lawyer people again. I haven't done that yet, but whatever legal aid we get, it's going to be like, these things don't agree with each other. And we'll be like, yeah, we know. Just, how can we get this done in the best way possible?
okay.
Okay. Well, thank you both for coming. I guess we could probably stop recording now. I'm going to stop sharing.
All right. So